Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining us for part 3 of our IoT Solutions for Retail Supply Chains webinar series. This is the third and final part. If you want to go see the other 2 episodes, you can check them out on YouTube. And basically, in this webinar series, we're talking about how IoT-connected solutions can help bring visibility to your retail supply chains. So on the first session, we talked about manufacturing and warehouse, basically how you can set up connected solutions to provide visibility for your important merchandise, inventory, or whatever it is that your product is. Second session, we talked about in-transit visibility, so basically the space in between major points in the supply chain and how you can track items there. And then today, our final part, we're going to talk about the storefront, which is the final part before the goods make their way into consumer hands. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and we're going to go ahead and go through the agenda real quick. So I'll introduce myself and the company. I'll discuss a little bit the purpose and format of the webinar series. Obviously, with this being the last episode, it'll just kind of be a recap on the series and what we've gone over. And then we'll hop into IoT solutions for the retail supply chain storefront. We'll do an overview, focus on the solutions that you can deploy, how to deploy a solution, and then the benefits of a connected system. We'll then have a Q&A session, and then we will close. So for those who have been on the webinar before, the format is the exact same. We're going to save all questions until the very end. We will conduct questions through the chat function. So if you have questions throughout, keep them in your back pocket, type them out, and then when we have the dedicated time for the Q&A session, we can address those then. If for some reason we don't get to your question, I have my email on the last slide. Send an email to me directly. I'd be happy to help you with any sort of questions or comments that you may have. But that will be today's agenda. So quick introduction about who I am and who the company is. So my name is Christian Garcia. I'm a product manager in charge of our supply chain solutions here at Aptricity. Been with the company in some capacity for over 10 years. Been in the product management role for about 4 years now. And my job is to help build out this product, help build out the solution so that it's solving many of the major problems that people face with their supply chains. And Aptricity as a company has been around for over 20 years, and we are a provider of IoT-enabled solutions, utilizing the latest in IoT technology and IoT devices and cloud-hosted software to provide and create a connected system of operations. So we'll talk a little bit more about what a system of operations is towards the end, but this is a term that we're really pushing that helps describe what we provide for customers. Like I said, we have over 20 years of experience working with large organizations such as Verizon, Komatsu, Brinks, the U.S. Army. We work with different sections of the U.S. Air Force as well. We have a pretty big footprint in the government side as well as the commercial side. So we've been at this for a long time. You may have heard me say this before, but we have done this webinar series to really help share some of the information that we've learned with our years in the business to help you make the right types of decisions to manage your retail supply chain more efficiently. So that's a little bit about who we are. Webinar series. So basically, we've touched on this 3 times, or this is the 3rd time we've touched on this, but we really want you guys to take this key takeaway and really have this, this is really the mission statement of this webinar, if you will. It's that complete supply chain visibility is not only achievable, but it can be done with an automated, low maintenance solution that combines cloud-hosted software with IoT-connected devices. This allows retail companies to eliminate blind spots in key areas of the supply chain. I've mentioned this on podcasts, webinars, all the different type of content that I've been a part of, but you're hard pressed to go more than 10 minutes without hearing about supply chain issues in today's economy. We are a business that's trying to help provide visibility, which is one of the main problems faced in supply chains. And so that's what this webinar series is about. There's really 3 different retail models that we're focusing on. So we did this series to focus specifically on retail. Obviously, with the holidays coming up, retail is going to be much more in the spotlight of the economy. And there's really 3 models that we're addressing in this series. The first model is companies that manufacture and sell their own merchandise at self-managed channels. So these are people that can control the supply chain from manufacturing all the way down to the storefront level and they're responsible for selling their own product. The second model are companies that manufacture and sell their merchandise across both their own self-managed channels and authorized retail partners. So again, you control the means of production. You may sell some of your product at your own store, but then you also ship out to retail partners that you've made. So that's model number 2. And then model number 3 is companies that do not manufacture their own product, and they just sell products from multiple different retail partners. These are people that, again, they don't control the means of production, but as they receive everything in, they are now responsible for selling it at their storefront. So across this webinar series, these are the 3 that we've really touched on. Again, I would encourage you to go check out parts 1 and 2 if you want to learn more about how IoT solutions can help at the manufacturing and warehouse level, and then also in transit. So that's really been the crux of this webinar series. And we're going to end the series today with talking specifically about Storefront. So the goal for this series is to discuss the viability of IoT-enabled solutions at 3 key points in the supply chain. And like I said, our first session, manufacturing and warehouse. And depending on your business model, you either control the manufacturing side or you control product once it makes its way into your warehouse or distribution center. Part 2, we talked about in transit. That's, again, just the middle ground between the different points of the supply chain. And then the third session, which is today, is the storefront. So how do we make sure that we retain that same level of visibility that we've got, or that we've accomplished in manufacturing and in transit? How do we retain that same level of visibility at the storefront level? That's really what we're going to be talking about today. So let's talk about the storefront. That's why we're all here. This is the final session, and let's talk about goods at the storefront. We've successfully made it from manufacturing to the warehouse to maybe another distribution center or something in between. It's at the store. We're ready to sell it. Everything's good. This is where pain points hurt the worst, because you've made it all the way through the supply chain, and if you lose it at the storefront, it hurts because you're so much closer to the finish line, right? And so basically, this is the final stop in the supply chain. This is where product makes its way into the hands of the consumer, and problems at this point hurt the worst because you've made it so far and you're so close to selling this thing and realizing a complete supply chain. So some of the common pain points we're going to be addressing here today: hours spent looking for misplaced product. I believe that this is a universal use case. We all are familiar with the use case where you go into the store and you ask for, maybe a TV or, a specific cable, or really could be anything. And you say, okay, well, the website said you had 6 of these in stock. And the employee goes back and says, yeah, we do. Let me go find it. And they're walking around, they're looking for it. They look at the place where it's supposed to be. It's not there. And they come back and say, hey, our system says that we have it, but we're having trouble finding it. So just give me a little bit more time. And you're waiting there and you're waiting there and you're waiting there. And eventually you either say, I don't really need this that badly, and you just leave, or, the person comes back and says, hey, we must have a discrepancy in the system because it says we have 6, but I can't find any. Maybe one of these is a floor model or whatever the case may be. I've experienced this a handful of times. I'm sure that you've probably experienced this once or twice in your life as well. Those hours spent, minutes, hours, however long spent looking for misplaced product, it really contributes to a bad customer experience. And you're missing out on potential sales if you're telling this person to wait 30 minutes while you go find something that, was misplaced or may not even be there anymore. And that kind of goes into the second point. Second pain point is if there's a discrepancy between what the point of sale system says you have and what you actually have in the store itself. Same example, you go looking around for it and you realize you don't have it. And you realize that your point of sale system is off. It's not representing, the latest truth about how much you have. And that may only be for one product, but it could also be for things that you haven't even thought about. You're only looking for one of these things. And if your stock quantities are off, it's reasonable to assume that your stock quantities could be off in other places too. So this is the second pain point we're addressing. And then the third pain point is really the remediation for the first two, which is cycle counting. This is how you get the most up-to-date information about what you have on hand. I can tell you firsthand, my first job was at a sporting goods store. And when we had to go do cycle counts, we had barcode scanning, and we had to shut the store down at 8 o'clock, and we didn't leave till 2 in the morning. And this was a store-wide cycle count. And you think about the types of people. That was my first job. I was 16 years old. Probably wasn't the most reliable employee at the time. I was tired, wanted to get home, was getting paid minimum wage. The results that I was presenting to the company may not have been the most accurate. I may have just wanted to get through it and get home. And so you start thinking about cycle counts and how important they are, because that is the remedy to the hours spent looking for misplaced product and the discrepancy between your point of sale system and what you actually have. If that solution is flawed, then you really have a tough time understanding with any sort of confidence what you actually have. And so cycle counts require a lot of manual hours. So if you take the example that I had, maybe we had 60 employees working at this store. We were working from the hours of 8 o'clock till 2 in the mornings. That's 6 hours. 60 employees, 6 hours. It's 360 hours that were spent. I think that's right. I'm not. That sounds right. I'm not good with math. If you've been on a webinar before, you probably know that. That's 360 hours. And then you multiply that by the average wage, and that's how much you're spending to get a cycle count result set that you may not even be able to trust. And so how do we address that pain point? How do we limit the manual hours spent or eliminate them entirely? And how do we present results that are actually something that you can be confident in? So those are the 3 pain points we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to be addressing those problems with 2 solutions for the most part. So if you've been on the other webinars, you'll notice that the picture that I'm trying to paint is that you can deploy these solutions to solve multiple problems. And really the only difference between the solutions is where the different technology goes. Because at the end of the day, and we'll touch on this at the end of the webinar, at the end of the day, really what we're trying to communicate is that you're using the same type of fixed readers, tags, and software to solve all of these problems. And so you may recognize these 2 solutions. We talked about indoor positioning and basically how you can establish a tracking mesh. Again, there's 3 components. You're using fixed readers, Bluetooth beacons, a floor map. Well, for indoor positioning, there's really 4, but you're using fixed readers, Bluetooth beacons, a floor map, which is basically representative of your storefront or your location, and you're using cloud-hosted software, and it's providing near real-time location updates for everything that's tagged. So that's what indoor positioning does. And then we're also doing inventory tracking. So basically that same exact setup we're using to provide automated quantity updates. So when you tag an item, if you have a common number like a SKU or a product number, as a scan takes place with the same technology that you're using for indoor positioning, you can now say, I found 10 tags that were associated with this product number. Therefore, I know I have 10 of this specific product. And that's really where the software solution comes into play, is making that marriage of tag number and unique product ID. But essentially, inventory tracking allows you to then compare with what your point of sale system is reporting. And so that's what gives you that ability to automate that cycle counting, automate that scan process, get a result set, and then start to compare and contrast. So those are the 2 solutions that we're going to be focusing on specifically here in today's session. So let's talk about how we deploy that solution. You might recognize some of this text because it's the same. And that's, again, I'm really hoping that we're making this point that a lot of these solutions are the exact same. They provide value across multiple different parts of the supply chain. And so the first step in deploying any type of solution is to install the prerequisite infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about fixed readers with internet connectivity. Internet connectivity can be accomplished through LTE cellular, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet. So basically you have options. And for things like LTE and cellular, you're powering that controller with the same type of SIM chip that you'd use in your smartphone. And so you're basically giving it a connected data plan. If you have Wi-Fi in your store, you can connect it that way by attaching a Wi-Fi antenna to the controller, or you can power it and connect it to the internet through Ethernet. So if you have cabling going through your location, you can do it that way. So you have choices. The key thing, though, is that the controllers have to be connected to power, and they have to have the proper antennas for scanning. So depending on the tag types that you use, you need RFID antennas or you need Bluetooth antennas. So very simple. If you have Bluetooth tags in your location, you want Bluetooth antennas. Same thing with RFID. You scan an RFID, or if you have RFID tags, you need RFID antennas. If you have a combination of the two, then you're going to want a combination of the two in terms of the antennas. So basically, when we go in and when we implement a customer at Aptricity, we're going into the location and we're basically scouting out, okay, we think we need a controller here, and we're going to need the antennas at these different points, in the ceiling. And basically, we're creating a fully connected zone. If you think about how these antennas scan, you can basically draw a radius, like a circle radius around the antenna. And so what we're able to do is by placing these antennas strategically around, the storefront or the warehouse or the in-transit vehicle, we can ensure that we're getting full coverage across the entirety of the location where scans and tracking is needed. And so that's what we're doing during the implementation phase of any sort of deal that we work here at Aptricity. When we're talking about IPS, basically once we deploy the solution for IPS, the controllers are constantly scanning and they're updating positioning on the web application. So the positioning updates can take place anywhere between 5 to 12 minutes, depending on how many tags you're scanning. And we've been able to get that below 5 minutes. Again, it depends on how many tags you're scanning, because if you think about, if I'm scanning 1,000 tags, it takes time for the system to process all that information. If I'm scanning 2 tags, it doesn't take nearly as long. But not many people are doing an IPS solution for 2 items. So we typically don't see that. But the controllers are constantly scanning. And then the reason why they need that internet connectivity is because once that scan is complete, it's packaging that data up and then sending it to the cloud-hosted solution, the cloud-hosted web application through that internet connectivity. When we talk about inventory tracking, controllers are then configured to conduct a scan at a user-defined frequency. So this could be every minute, this could be every hour, this could be once a day, and it could be anything in between. So basically, it's the same concept. I'm scheduling that scan to take place. The controller's powering up, it's scanning everything, it's collecting that data, packaging it up, using the internet connectivity, it's sending it to the cloud-hosted solution. And all those results for both IPS and for inventory tracking can be viewed from the web and a mobile application. So that's really how we're deploying the solution. And once it's deployed, that's how we're able to get results. Automated results is really the key takeaway, is that you don't have to go press a button to start a scan. You don't have to, say start scan on your mobile phone. This is happening. You're programming it to happen automatically. And like I said, for IPS, it's happening on an ongoing basis. For inventory tracking, it's a little bit more segmented based off of how frequently you want that information. So when we have the solution deployed and we know what we're trying to deploy, what are the benefits that you get from that? This is really why we're here, right? What's the return on investment that I get? And the first thing that we're going to talk about is reducing labor hours and producing accurate results for cycle counting. So basically, an inventory tracking solution can conduct cycle counts automatically within minutes, as opposed to hours, and in some cases, hundreds of hours. And it gives you greater accuracy. So this is the biggest win that you can achieve almost immediately by connecting your system to the Internet of Things and then having a cloud-hosted solution. You can go on the web, you can view the latest cycle count report, you can view everything that was scanned, and then you can basically compare it against what your point of sale system is reporting at that time. Reducing labor hours, providing greater accuracy. This is a very big win, specifically when you're comparing it to, sending out your employees to go count things by hand, right? Improving merchandise tracking on the sales floor. So we're talking about IPS now. So basically, you're eliminating that time spent looking for misplaced product because you have a system in place that's automatically putting product at their specific location on the floor map. So now instead of telling somebody, hey, we think it's in this area, or it's in this part of the back room, They can pull up their mobile device, or they can pull up a tablet or their laptop and say, okay, here's the map. I'm looking for this specific product, and it'll flag where it's at in the store. And then they can just go walk over there and grab it. So now you're not walking around aimlessly. You can now say, okay, I know where this is at. Let me go find it. Better customer experience, more time spent, engaging with customers and managing the store as opposed to looking for things. Obviously, that's time that we want to get rid of as much as possible. So that's what an IPS solution can do. Basically, when we talk about product quantities reported by the point of sale system, we'll talk about this a little bit more in some of the next couple of slides. But basically, what inventory tracking does is it provides up-to-date statuses of quantity levels. A point of sale system can get out of whack if it's not perfectly in alignment with things like shrinkage, things like, maybe a product broke down and you had to send it back. Your point of sale system is only going to be able to tell you, here's how much we have available for sale. And once a sale takes place, it's going to deduct quantity. But there's all these other things that are taking place. Maybe, unfortunately, theft it's a real thing. And if you're losing items due to theft, or if things are getting lost or broken, your point of sale system is not really going to account for that in real time. An inventory tracking solution is going to be able to do that for you. It's going to scan all the tags that are in the location, in the vicinity, and it'll tell you, here's how much you currently have. By comparing those two things, and we'll talk about this step a little bit more, by integrating the two solutions together, you can have a two-way integration that sends data back and forth that says, okay, well, my storefront system is telling me I only have 10 of this item, but my point of sale system is telling me I'm having 15. How do I reconcile between those differences? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. And we're also talking about enforcing delivery schedules. So basically, when we talk about eye controllers and we talk about GPS antennas in the eye controllers, as things are getting delivered to your location, basically now from the storefront level, if you can start taking a look into, and this is kind of going back into the in-transit side, but at the storefront level, if you have GPS in the vehicles that are shipping your product, you can now start taking a look and saying, okay, I know I'm supposed to expect this thing on Friday, but this guy's still a couple of days away. Is he going to make it in time? And again, that gives you from the storefront the ability to predict and to project. I know I'm going to have this much on hand, especially when you start talking about new product launches. That is, knowing how much you're going to have is so important. And so while this may be more of an in-transit benefit, it still helps on the storefront side, because as we'll discuss in the next slide, what we're really trying to promote is a fully connected system where everybody has visibility. So people at the storefront level can see when shipments are coming in. They can see how much is coming in, and they can essentially prepare accordingly for how much is going to be delivered. And so basically, if you start to get an understanding of shipments that are on time, maybe, behind time or, behind schedule rather, you can start to, plan accordingly for things like product launches, or if you are running a sale on a particular weekend and you need to know how much quantity you have on hand, that's having that visibility into what's on the vehicles and when they're going to get delivered is incredibly important. So when we look at all three of these things, we're really summarizing the webinar series at this point, and we're going to be talking about the connected retail system. We talk about the tools. It's very simple. The tools: tags, RFID or Bluetooth, fixed readers, eye controllers, and cloud-hosted software, accuracy asset management or inventory management. The floor mapping component goes into the cloud-hosted software as well, if we're talking about IPS. But this is the takeaway. It's that a connected system is possible, and the infrastructure is minimal, but it provides maximum visibility. It fits seamlessly into existing architecture and business practice. You don't have to go out of your way to experience the benefits of the solution. You're not introducing all these different steps that you have to take to track and manage. This is all happening automatically, and you can get reports in real time if you want them. You can go view reports at the end of the day. You can go see things in real time on your map in the cloud-hosted software to go locate items or locate vehicles. But the technology is the same. It's the same controllers, it's the same tags, it's the same software. And as you start deploying it across your supply chain, you can manage who has visibility and access into particular areas or particular product. There's user roles that are defined within the system to make sure that people have access to the data that they need. But at the same time, like we talked about in the previous slide, you may want people to have access to the entirety of the supply chain so they can make informed decisions about how to manage the storefront, how to manage the in-transit, how to manage the manufacturing in the warehouse. It's possible. We've done it. We've seen it done. It is possible, and you're using the same types of equipment and the same types of software. And so it's not like you have to go to one vendor to find your controllers, another vendor to find your tags, and a third vendor to find your software. You can come to one place and get all of it. And it's all field tested and ready to go. So we mentioned how Apptricity provides really a system of operation, not necessarily a system of record. And so this is a question we get asked a lot, is really, what is a system of operations? And so when we take a look at the landscape, more often than not, your business probably has an existing ERP solution. You spend a lot of money, getting it set up. You spend a lot of time getting it set up, and it works for you. You may like it, you may not like it. You may be somewhere in between, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon because of the investment that you put into it. What Apptricity does is it provides a system of operation. And basically, this gives you the day-to-day intelligence that enables your ERP solution to be its most valuable. You can only make predictions as good as the day-to-day data that you're receiving, because predictions are made up of combinations of day-to-day data. And we talked about how supply chain problems can snowball if they start at the top, and by the end of the supply chain, those snowballs can get pretty big. It's the same thing with the system of operation. If you have discrepancies in your day-to-day data, as that moves down the prediction chain, if you will, you can have wildly inaccurate numbers because the things that happen at the day-to-day level are not being tracked and managed and captured properly. So what Apptricity does is provides a system of operation that provides real-time analysis into day-to-day operations. When we have controllers that are scanning and reports that are being generated, this is happening daily. It can happen hourly. It can happen, half hourly. And that's really the key takeaway, is that it can happen as frequently or infrequently as you want. You're getting immediate insight into trends. You're getting immediate access to the system, and you can take immediate action when things require attention. You're not waiting. You're not being reactive to the problems that are taking place. You're being proactive and managing and approaching those as they come about. You're not having to worry about, quarterly, I have to review everything that took place. And I know now that there were all these problems that I could have addressed early on if only, I had the insight into what was going on. A system of record won't do that for you. A system of operation does. And so we are enabling that system of record to be its most valuable and its most trustworthy by feeding it with accurate day-to-day information. And Apptricity has standard connectors into all the major ERP solutions. We can do two-way interfaces. We can do one-way interfaces. We can do anything in between. And we're providing them with accurate operational data that's required to function at maximum efficiency and value. So it's not a hostile takeover. It's a symbiotic relationship where we're feeding that with information that allows it to be its most valuable for your business. And so that's what a system of operation is. With that, we've come to the end of this presentation, and we will now reserve some time for any questions that you may have. Like I mentioned, we will address the questions through the chat function. I'm already seeing a couple come through. So I'll take a quick drink of water, and then we will dive into this. All right, question number one: which is better for IPS, BLE or RFID? So one thing that we mentioned in the first webinar series, which, as you know, I would always encourage people to go back and revisit previous material. When we talk about IPS, the way that IPS works is it requires an active tag to beacon out its information, to basically beacon out, here I am, here's what's specific about me. RFID tags don't typically do that. When we talk about RFID at Aptricity, we're mostly talking about passive RFID, and a big component of the location prediction, the algorithm and the machine learning that takes place on the back end requires that to be an active beacon sending out information. And so by virtue of that, Bluetooth is the only solution that we deploy for indoor positioning. However, when we start talking about the 3 Ps, and I think we talked about this in our first webinar for this series, the 3 Ps being position, proximity, and position, proximity, and presence. So basically, presence is something that you can accomplish with a solution like inventory tracking, because I'm still setting up a controller. I can assign that controller to a location, whether that's a room, whether that's a building, whether that's a vehicle, it could be anything, right? And anything that controller scans, that it's present in that location. As you start moving down into, proximity and position, you need more active technology, because it helps kind of cut off if you think about it from the path that the signals have to travel. An RFID scanner has to go all the way to the tag to scan it, versus if you have a Bluetooth beacon that's beaconing out and an antenna, they're meeting more in the middle. So you get more accurate results, and you get more results because that tag is beaconing. So long story short, IPS, we go with Bluetooth because it helps enable that system to become more accurate. Next question. Technology will allow inventory to seamlessly be tracked from the manufacturer all the way to the storefront without changing tags. That's correct. So when we talk about the top end of the supply chain, if you tag things at the manufacturing level, or if you're not manufacturing and you receive them in your warehouse, you can tag them at that moment, make that combination of unique product ID and unique tag ID. And as it moves across the supply chain, if you have the fully connected system installed and it's the same technology like we mentioned, you're getting updates as it goes from manufacturing to warehouse to vehicle to storefront. And the location is constantly updating as it's being scanned by the different controllers at the different points in the supply chain. So those location updates are happening automatically. And those tags, depending on how long it takes to get from manufacturing to the storefront, these Bluetooth tags can last a very long time. We've seen Bluetooth tags last 2 to 3 years. If you want more frequent tag pings on the low end, you might get 6 months out of them. But there's room in the Bluetooth side to maximize the tag lifespan, so you don't have to change tags. With RFID, passive RFID tags, assuming that the tags don't get destroyed, they'll last forever. And so you don't have to change tags as it goes from location to location. If you have the system in place, you can track it as it goes from, again, from the top of the supply chain to the consumer. And you may want to, you may take the tag off before you sell it, right? So that you can reuse it again. And so that's really the value of the solution. Is with things like RFID, you typically put it on, and then when you sell it, you just basically take it out of your system. With Bluetooth, you can reuse it if you want to. So good question. You do not have to change tags. As long as your supply chain is operating efficiently, and you don't have to, if you have Bluetooth, you're not pinging every second. You'll have tags that will last the entirety of the time. Next question: does the frequency of pings affect the cost? In a roundabout way, yes. So at Aptricity, we don't charge by ping. We charge a flat device connection fee for just connecting the tag and connecting it to scans. If you ping more frequently, you drain the battery quicker. And so in that sense, yes, it could cost more because you have to replace the battery, or some tags don't have replaceable batteries, so you have to replace the entire tag. So a ping rate, it doesn't cost any more from the subscription side, but it does cost more in the sense that you have to replace the battery or potentially replace the tag. So again, roundabout answer, yes, it does. It does in the long run cost more if you ping more, but you also get better location accuracy and more data to work with. So there's a bit of a trade-off. And in our experience, we've seen people, find that middle ground between, frequency of pings, maximal battery life, and maximum data gathered. So there is a middle ground, and it varies based off of customer use case. Good questions so far. Give it another minute or so, and then we can go ahead and close out. All right. Well, we can go ahead and close. I want to thank you guys for joining us in this retail webinar series. We hope that this information has been valuable. As I mentioned, I know we're coming up on the holidays, and I know that this is really prime time for retail. So if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer. My email is listed here in the PowerPoint. It's cgarcia@apptricity.com. Reach out to me with any questions, comments, concerns. I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions about how we can help you, or just questions in general about retail supply chains and how solutions can be put in place. Like I mentioned, each of these recordings are going to be available on YouTube. You can go there and visit that, or you can visit our YouTube channel. Just search Apptricity in YouTube and you should be able to find it. You can view past webinar series. You can also view, in the near future, we'll have some of our podcasts that will be up there as well. We do have other long form content like podcasts. We have short form content like video shorts. So that's kind of the hub for all that information. So if you want to go and check out more, you can go there. And again, final thank you for joining us. This is the final part of this webinar series. We would encourage you to be on the lookout for any future webinar series that may come into play. If you have any recommendations, things that you'd like us to talk about, questions that you have, we're happy to address those, because that's really what this format is to help empower you with information that we've learned in our time in the industry. So with that being said, thank you again for joining us. Thanks to Ben for our production. He always does a fantastic job, so I always want to give him a shout out. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will hopefully see you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.